people, because this started as just one hashtag and it's sort of just blown our minds.
You know, there's the principle of slacktivism, you know, where you start a hashtag, but it doesn't really change anything.
Yeah.
You know, Bring Back Our Girls was one of those. It doesn't really change anything, you know, as we see
but
police
don't you
extinguishing
think that
fires now.
Yes.
In this case, you have Fees Must Fall as a hashtag that has gone global within less than a week.
Within less than a week,
and you can see young people have galvanized them behind the hashtag. The interesting thing in the entire picture is what has happened is that this hashtag was actually one of the respondents in a court interdict, and that was a first for South Africa as well a little bit earlier this week. But there you have pictures of police extinguishing a fire.
Extinguishing that fire, yeah.
A toilet, a temporary toilet that was set alight there.
Seems like there's a lot of chaos now with smoke there. It's going to be...
Smoke starting to billow. Smoke starting to billow around the union buildings. Very concerning pictures as young people continue their protest in the capital against, well, fees in South Africa. In South Africa, a 10.5% increment in fees was announced by most universities about 2 weeks ago. The students have since galvanized, and it's all culminated in the pictures that you see here right now.
Now joining us in studio is digital news multimedia producer Matiba Sibanyoni. To take this conversation of social media further, we had started it even before we shot back to the union buildings. Matiba, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
Matiba, let's look at this conversation that was sparked on social media. When exactly did it start and how did it start?
The conversation actually started last week Sunday, around the 10th until the 12th, and it only came up where people started noticing it sometime earlier this week. So this had been gaining momentum. The protests have been very, very peaceful, even online, and the more people came on board, the more vocal and angry the crowd started being, even online. So we've been covering it from all aspects, online, on TV, radio, and we have our journalists on the ground where they are tweeting, they have vines, where they're showing exactly what's happening, and this has been happening throughout the week till this moment.
We've seen in recent times a lot of hashtags started. Rhodes Must Fall, for instance, was one, but before that, Bring Back Our Girls, and so forth. Are you surprised that this one is the first hashtag that's really galvanized in this kind of mass protest?
No, I'm not surprised. You know, this is how news has become lately, and we're seeing a lot of citizen journalism where people sometimes trust citizens who are on the ground, who know what's going on, as opposed to the main media. Obviously, when we come into the picture, we bring authority and to say that, you know what, we have verified our facts, we know exactly what we are talking about. So it's not surprising, and that is how media is going now, where people want to hear it directly from the people. And it creates movements like this, where you find these movements around the world now. There are people who are also joining in solidarity with South Africa to protest against the increase of fees.
So social media really can galvanize people. We saw that in the London riots a couple of years ago, and this kind of thing can spread like wildfire very quickly. But are you surprised that other universities elsewhere in the world have all joined in? We've seen it in London, we've seen it in Australia. Are you guys looking at how the rest of the world is touching on this protest here in South Africa?
Yes, and you know, most protests in South Africa, this picture that we're seeing on air right now, it's kind of typical with South African protests. And so when we saw people being very peaceful, kind of said, you know what, this is how other countries do their protests. Like you see protests in China where people bring lunch boxes, water, and they sit quietly and peacefully and they protest. And that's how South Africa has been compared to other countries throughout the week. And sadly enough, that changed to the picture that we are seeing right now. And it kind of takes away where in other countries there are peaceful protests going on right now that are supporting us, and this is happening in our country.
Matiba, let's look at the evolution of these hashtags. It started with fees must fall, and then Wits fees must fall. Every university went on board as well, and then at some point you had protest and pass, where the students are protesting during the day and then studying in the evening. Take us through that evolution.
Well, when the hashtag came up, it was actually very, very interesting. What you just said now about students protesting through in the mornings. I know with vet students specifically, they would go protest and then they'd take a break and they'd actually go have lunch, go and study. But there were still people who were protesting online. So you don't physically need to be on the ground in order to protest. And this hashtag, it started from the hashtag that has been trending throughout the week, the Wits fees must fall. This moved to Cape Town, where you saw University of Cape Town, Rhodes fees must fall. But what's interesting is that today, one of the top trending hashtag is union buildings, which kind of shows you that it goes beyond just the university. This affects everybody, and that's what it's
is
come
that the
to.
top trending topic today?
Yes, the last few minutes ago, last time I checked, the top trending tweets is union buildings. It may have started at Wits University and about Wits specifically, but this is now about everybody.
The one thing that we start to see with the, call it the hashtag style protest that's developed, is that it's very difficult to maintain discipline within these protests because there are so many disconnected parties that come together without real leadership. At the end of the day, it's a hashtag that runs it. So when one sees images of people pulling on fences, as we've just seen now, you realize how explosive these types of protests can be, because it seems as if on the ground there isn't real leadership, and this can really lead us into a kind of mob mentality that's completely combustible.
Exactly. Hashtags are relatively new for people, where someone will see something online, they'll be like, oh, that's trending, let me check what's going on. And obviously, sometimes it angers people, will be like, you know what, this is happening somewhere else. I'm angry, I'm going to tear down this fence. But what was interesting is that there is now less control from the media or whoever that is in authority when it comes to hashtag, because anybody can say whatever they want online. And you really remember that earlier in the week, University of Cape Town, as well as CPUT, took an interdict with the High Court, trying to stop people from using these hashtags. But a few years ago in South Africa, a lot of politicians came out to say, well, you need to ban Twitter. Or
it was for me. It was absolutely I think a landmark day when a hashtag was the first respondent in a High Court application in South Africa, which for me kind of stood out. Being from the previous generation, a little bit older, I'd never thought these kinds of days would ever happen.
Yes, I'm thinking back in the day, you could tell somebody you're not allowed to say these words. But the thing about hashtags is that, as you will have seen throughout the week, it was Wits fees must fall. But now the main hashtag is union buildings. So people could stop talking about that and associating it with you directly. They'll just move on to the next hashtag, which will grow just as big. So you can't really stop it or control people to that point. And that's what's interesting. And our laws are very different from other countries' laws. So if you decide that you're going to stop this law from South Africa, someone in the next country could go continue that hashtag. It could actually boom and become bigger than what you thought it might be.
But also a big critique of social media and the internet is that there's lack of governance over it. There's no control over it. And also another critique is that people hide behind a computer, behind a phone, and they can say what they want, do all those memes that everyone was complaining
I
about
have a little bit of personal
earlier.
experience
So
of
he's
that.
had bad experience.
Is that I find in the social media age that people are a lot meaner than what they used to be, because there's a disconnect between the phone and the laptop and the real world, and you feel that you can vent and you can use harsher language in a way. I don't think people would be able to use the same language face to face with people as we used to do back in the day, or even on the phone line, as it were. But now, and that's why this situation is also so combustible.
People become very brave behind screens, hey? But there's like research that shows that people are more honest and more sincere when they're in private spaces and they're behind the computers, because they have less fear of being judged for their opinions. So I don't know if it's fear or they're being judged. So yeah.
Thanks for the update, Matiba. Now, joining us on the line is our reporter, Tumaule Muhlaudi, who is at the Union Buildings. Tumaule, what's the latest on your side?